All right, y'all. Good morning. What's up? It's about 10 of 8. I'm here a little early at the Atlanta bus station because I lost my disabled bus driver pass. If any of you out there know anything about bus riding, I don't have much more to go. June, I'm eligible to drive again, and I'm sick of this shit. But it costs $4 a day for a pass to get to and from where you're going. It's $4. Okay, with a disabled pass, it's $1. I suffer from bipolar disorder. I should be getting SSI. I shouldn't have to work, but my baby's mom fights tooth and nail and domestic relations is with her. If I didn't have children, I'd probably be getting SSI right now. But because I have a baby's mom from hell, I have to keep working and dealing with it. But anyway, I get a disabled bus pass, and I'm here at Atlanta Bus. Waiting for them. I always lose it. It's very. Just this week alone, I'll save, I think, $22 by having that pass. So add that week after week, month after month. I've been doing this for like four fucking years. It saved me thousands of dollars. It's a big deal. But that's not today's show. Today's show is the history of the English language. I've tried to give this a few times, and there's one main point that I want to bring in this show. The English language is the most widely spoken language across the globe, okay, in history. And it almost got wiped out. We could be speaking French right now, and that's basically the story I want to tell you today. Now, English as a language dates back to about 500 AD, when the Anglo-Saxons invaded, when the Roman Empire fell, the Anglo-Saxons, the Jutes, a bunch of other tribes. There was Geats involved. That's what Beowulf was, a Geat. There was all these big, huge tribes and nations of like Germans moving to England. I guess, was the move at that point. There was probably climate change going on in Central Europe. There was a lot of movement of barbarian tribes and breakdown of any type of order. So the movement west was, I think, the way to go if you were a young German man in about, anywhere from 500 to 1000 AD. Now, during that time, definitely the Anglo-Saxon invasions, about 500 to about 700 AD, 750. And then, and as they came, the Angles and the Saxons, they all spoke the same language, basically Old German. And they brought with them some stories. One that lasts with us, one that somehow made it, and we still know is Beowulf. That's really the main Anglo-Saxon. Old English is the correct term for that language that it's written in. If you try to read the original Beowulf in its original Old English, you will not be able to understand even a sentence of it without some sort of translation. So English, we're gonna talk about three different periods of English language, history of English language. All right, and the first period is the Old English period. Now, England would evolve as a nation, and the Anglo-Saxons would evolve as a nation. When the Anglo-Saxons came to England, they had small petty kingdoms. It wasn't one big nation. So you had, and that's where the names come. There was one called Wessex, and that stood for Western Saxons. There was another one called Essex, Eastern Saxons. There was even another one called Sussex, Southern Saxons. Also, the word for people in German is Volk. So you had Norfolk and Suffolk, northern folk, northern people, and southern people, and those are all places now in England. They're common. You've heard those words before. That's what they mean. So eventually, a guy named Alfred the Great, he was a king of Wessex. He united most of the Anglo-Saxons and made England into a proper nation. And that's where the word England comes from, the land of the Angles, Angleland, England. Although the Saxons were there too, and several other tribes. Angles get the credit. English. So it would start to evolve, and what happened was in the year 1066, and I'm trying to do a show, but this is a show that I'm going to have to break into multiple parts. I need artists, I need graphic designs. It's a pretty good story, but I don't want to just give it this whole me just talking to a camera thing. I want to do the Norman conquest. And what are the Normans? And the Normans, like the name Norman is so much more boring than what these people were. I mean, let me try to bring it home. The Norman invasion just doesn't bring home what it was. Let me put it like this. The Viking Age kicked off in 793 at Lindisfarne. Vikings first attacked England there. Somebody said in Sweden or Norway was like, "Hey Sven, there's a bunch of people in England that have more money than us. Maybe if we build a boat, we can go there and take it." Somebody did that in 793, and they realized the Vikings made such fast ships they could just show up, take everything, and be out. So they started doing that all over Europe, and so many of them did it in France, in Paris. Like Paris was getting sacked every single year for a while, for decades. It was just regular that Vikings were coming, and so many of them came that they didn't leave. And they said that the king said to them, "Look, all right, how about this? I'm going to give you. There's a bunch of land to the west of here. You can have it. We'll just call it. You're the Normans. All right. Well, you Normans can live there. We'll call it Normandy." And that's where for the next 200 years, a nation within France of Viking, blonde-haired, big 6'4", blue-eyed barbarians called the Normans, it made a place called Normandy, and it's right across the British Channel. And William the Bastard was the leader of the Normans. He was the Duke of Normandy. That means he answered only to the king, and he was the king of Normandy. He sacked William the Bastard, got his ducks in a row and sacked England, okay, and conquered England. It's called in 1066. It's the Norman invasion. That changed everything because, number one, they didn't speak English. They spoke French, the Normans. Okay. Number two, they came and they took it piecemeal. They took everything. They even call it Doomsday. Doomsday, was the name of what this whole thing. In fact, he made a book. He made William, and then after he conquered England, he was no longer William the Bastard. He was William the Conqueror. But he made this book of itemized everything in every farm, every chair, every pencil, every cow, every sheep, every person, everything was accounted for, and that book is known as the Domesday Book. It still exists to this day. And from then on in, French-speaking Vikings ruled England. Okay, they were called the Angevin Empire, or the Plantagenet Dynasty is another name for them. And they would rule for hundreds and hundreds of years in England. They got so big as a family, as a royal family, that they split into two families and had a war, the War of the Roses. That's what Game of Thrones is a mirror image of. But anyway, look, so French-speaking Vikings conquered England, and they became the elite. They never left. Again, they became the barons, the counts, the dukes, everything of importance. French-speaking guys came and took in England. So English as a language suddenly became this secondary thing, and French became number one. And that's why to this day, in the English language, everything that's fancy schmancy has a French name, because only rich people, when our language was being formed, could afford it. So you take a word like champagne, brassiere, limousine, garage. These are all French words. They're all words that came in from the French language by these conquerors, and they never left our language. Even stuff like, now, and then there's words like, the perfect example is in animals. Now, the word cow is an Anglo-Saxon word. The actual animal that's in the field, but once you kill it and slice it up and eat it, that's called beef. Beef. That's a French word. We call that beef, right? A pig is an Anglo-Saxon word for another word for a swine. Swine is the real word in German, but they also use the word pig. Anglo-Saxon's word for that animal was pig. When you kill the pig and slice it all up and eat it on a plate, it's now called ham. Also came from French. Over and over, all the fancy words in our language come from this time. And we almost got wiped. The English almost got wiped out as a language. Okay, because slowly but surely, since the elite were speaking it, it was trickling down, and more French words were entering into the common Anglo-Saxon vernacular. And it was looking bad for English as a language. But then, in the 1300s, during the time of the plagues, I think it was during Edward IV, one of the Edwards, like a non-notable king, like came along, and he had a guy who was kind of a common guy that was his secretary and his bookkeeper, and that guy knew both English and French very, very well, and he was ethnically English. He was not French at all. His name was Jeff. Well, I guess he did have some French in him, but he was like pro-English. His name was Geoffrey Chaucer, and he would go on to write a book called the Canterbury Tales. Canterbury Tales is about pilgrims. Canterbury is the most holy city in England back when England was still Catholic. Everybody every year, that was like the thing to do. Like in the summertime, like take a pilgrimage to Canterbury. Travel all the way to the east of England and see Canterbury. And the book is just like it takes place in an inn, and it's just all the different people who came near Canterbury, and it's all the people who came and stayed there on their way to make this pilgrimage, and each one of them tells a story. That's the Canterbury Tales. You've probably been forced to read it in high school, but you didn't. You muddled your way through it, or you didn't give a shit. It's a very important story because that book saved the English language. It was so popular with the common people, and most of them couldn't even read, but they were reading it in bars and pubs and shit, that it somehow went over big. And not only with the common people, it was popular with the nobles. So nobles started learning English a little bit. And that would begin the process of de-Frenchanizing the English language. Slowly but surely, over the next 200 years, English kings spoke more and more English and less French. Finally, it wasn't until the 100 Years' War, until King Henry V, I believe. King Henry V is the warrior king. He's the bad mofo of English kings. He almost conquered France. That's what the 100 Years' War was about. It was England versus France. For 100 years, they just kept fighting. And at one point, France almost took over England, but then Henry V had Paris. You know what I mean? Homeboy he married the king's daughter of France. Like, it was on. And then he died, like, mysterious, like, suddenly, and it was because of natural cause. It was, like, unfortunate. He's one of those dudes that'll be forever young. You know what I mean? So, yeah. That is how the English language was saved. I'm already at almost 13 minutes, so I'm going to cut this video short. Still no customer service here in Atlanta. Waiting for my bus pass, but I don't know. And what Chaucer speaks, that's Middle English. Okay, that's what's called Middle English, and I can understand Chaucer's original script much better than I can Old English and Beowulf. But nevertheless, how you doing? Chaucer saved the English language, and his brand of English is called Middle English. Now, another 150 years go by, you got guys like Shakespeare, Sir Francis Bacon, and England has Queen Elizabeth, and all of its kings now speak English. So England, modern English that we speak starts to become formed. It's really hard to understand Shakespeare. When I read Shakespeare, his sonnets and everything, it's hard to understand Shakespeare. But he's a lot more understandable than Chaucer and way more understandable than Old English. But if you read this stuff, if you take Beowulf and then you go to Chaucer and then you grab yourself some Shakespeare, you can kind of see the evolution of our language. And then you look another 200 years ahead of Shakespeare up to like 1800, and you get guys like Edgar Allan Poe, Dickens, Twain, shit like that. So, and it forms into the modern vernacular that we speak today. And we will keep evolving as a language. Okay, in another 200 years, what I'm saying on this video probably will be hard to understand or completely unintelligible. But then again, if you would have just filmed me 10 years ago saying the same shit, half the crap coming out of my mouth wouldn't be coming out. Maybe you wouldn't understand that either. History of the English language, your boy Romance. My dad's waiting outside. I'm going to need a bus pass. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm in Atlanta. Have a great day, people.